Hi, everyone. Welcome to 30 Minutes with Spyglass Lending. It is a Thursday, of course. It is August 4th. We have an awesome guest. They're all awesome, but this one in particular is very special. We really appreciate her being here. We're going to learn a lot today, myself included. Please welcome to the show, Sarineh Yedgarian. She is a sales account executive with Lawyer's Title. Sarineh, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Aaron, for having me. So excited to be here.
Awesome. And much appreciated again. So I always like to start these shows one way. Before we just jump into it or talk about real estate or get into it, we need to hear about you. We need to know your story. Who are you? Where are you from? What's going on? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Sarineh Yedgarian, and by my last name, I'm sure you could tell I'm Armenian. I was born in Iran, and I left when I was 2. My family migrated to the United States when I was 4. I had about a year and a half stop in Greece. And pretty much I've been raised in the Glendale area since then, and just been here, went to high school here, went to university here, and yeah.
LA is your home. Let's talk about Glendale for a second, because a lot of people might not know exactly what or where that is. That's sandwiched in between a couple of places. Can you give us a little idea?
So Glendale essentially would be between Pasadena and Burbank from a high scale. And I obviously, Glendale is known for being, lots of Armenians. So if you guys are ever in town, come by and I'll show you, what's around here. But yeah, so this is where I went to school. I had a short stop in Bakersfield in my, couple years there, but pretty much this is where I was raised.
North, all the way up on the 14 freeway, Bakersfield. Far cry from LA, but good to have you down in this neck of the woods, and you've obviously been here a long time. And have you always been in real estate? I mean, when you got out of school, did you jump right into it in some capacity, or were you doing something else?
No, I definitely did not get into real estate right away. So my education was sociology. I got into teaching. I went and I taught elementary school for a little while.
And, oh, wow. You had some rugrats. How old? What age range are we talking?
Age range, yeah. So I did elementary. I did actually all the way from K to 6th grade. And my favorite was 2nd grade. And that's probably because I absolutely loved my 2nd grade teacher. So I had a special connection there. And I pretty much taught all subjects. And after that, I moved to Bakersfield at the time. Mm-hmm. And at that time, it was around maybe 2008 where, jobs are a little bit difficult to find. And I was volunteering everywhere, and I couldn't find somewhere, mainly because they wanted someone Spanish speaking, and I couldn't speak Spanish. So I was just wetting my feet, getting, in different places, volunteering everywhere that I could find, a radio station, a college. And I found myself in a situation where I was volunteering and writing curriculum for a college. And the gentleman who came to teach a DISC class, he was a Keller Williams broker, CEO or team leader of the Bakersfield office. And I just went up to him. I said, "This is so out of character. I'm looking for a job. I have applied everywhere. I'm volunteering everywhere. And, do you have anything at your brokerage?" And he's like, "You know what? Yes, we have a couple of positions that are right about to open, and you should just come and interview with us." So, luck had it, universe had it that I went into that situation. I interviewed, and right away I got a job, and within 2 weeks I got promoted, and I stayed in that position for, about a year. And then we moved.
If I may ask, what were the positions? What did you start at exactly, and then what did you get promoted to?
I started off, and I just wanted to take anything. At that time I had my bachelor's, and I just was looking for any job at that point. So I started as their receptionist. And 2 weeks into it, they came to me and they said, "Hey, you're doing really good. Everybody loves you here. You have 2 choices. Do you want to get promoted to, what they would call the agent services and assistant to CEO, or you may, end up getting fired because they want a Spanish speaking, front desk person." And I was like, I got to learn Spanish now.
You're like, this is the second time I've heard that.
Yeah. So I said, "I'll take the promotion. Thank you very much." And I did. And 2 weeks into it, I started, really learning, what the agent's needs were. I started, helping the CEO in to the capacity that he needed, help the, my boss, which was the operations and finance manager at the time, to the capacity that she needed, and really excelled in that position. And I had a change of situation. So I was moving back to LA, And at that time, they're like, we really want to keep you within, the organization. You're doing really well. You can really grow here. So they started making calls, the owner did, the team leader did, and I got connected with some, influential people back in my area. And they were like, yeah, we would love to have you come back and stay in the organization. And I actually got hired back as my boss's position when I came down here. And I stayed in that position for about 5 years. So I pretty much, ran all the operation, did the finances, knew really the back end ins and outs of, agent needs, their real estate needs, the brokerage side. So that was
really. Let me ask, where was this very specifically? Where was this brokerage?
Yeah, I moved back to Glendale. So, and I stayed within the same company, Keller Williams. And that was just an amazing growth opportunity. I really just got the mindset of what agents needed. And that became really the people that I started to really understand the best. And then, at the time with Keller Williams, there was a lot of training, there was a lot of exposure to personal development and growth. And that really ignited the passion for me to pursue, personal development and take all the courses and just, continue to get better. I did go back to school and get my master's during that time as well.
So you were full-time position doing that and running the brokerage, but also going back and getting your master's?
Yeah, I went to school and I tend to, when things go, there's personal stuff happening, I tend to go into personal development. People have addictions, they run here and there, and mine became, really just, investing in myself and getting better. So I was like, okay, let's go. So I went and I actually got certified as a John Maxwell certified, trainer and coach during the time. I went and I got my master's and I was working full time. So it was a wonderful, growth time for me. And
where did you find all that energy? But more specifically, what was the master's in, by the way? What
leadership and organizational studies, so equivalent to an MBA.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And just kind of to set this tone again and to set like the time frame of all of this, because it's always interesting to know this. As you mentioned, you really started on a whim, in Bakersfield in 2008, right? And I think if we can kind of paint the picture, and not that everyone needs that reminder, but 2008 was the start of the Great Recession, right? And obviously real estate in particular took this massive dovetail downwards. But within just a couple of years, really started screaming back, right? Kind of 2010, turned the corner, and all of a sudden everything came back in price. All of these short sales, all these foreclosures, not to mention just standard sales happening left and right, tremendous amount of investor activity in there. So, and Keller Williams in particular, I think people probably want to know or hear about this. Golden years of Keller Williams was probably, that decade, 2010 all the way to 2020. Now, a lot of other brokerages have come about recently and kind of, not to say overtaken them, and KW is still a tremendous company, but really huge, awesome years. So you were there on the front lines of a great company during that time, running your own shop, it sounds like, kind of between 2010, 2015. Is that right?
Absolutely. So, yeah, of course, alongside with all the leadership that we had, there was so many great opportunities to grow and just personally develop and, just see different aspects of what's going on in the business on the back end of it. So it was a wonderful opportunity. And then shortly after, it was time for me to kind of move on with the position. And I got an opportunity to make a change, and that, led me into exploring, still within brokerages, but different aspects of the brokerage. So I got into business development, got into a little bit of recruiting and that aspect of it. So I really got a good overview of, really starting from the ground up to pretty much going through the positions within the brokerage side. And it really gave me a lot of good experience and a lot of insight into how, salespeople think, how agents think, what their needs are, who they serve, what their population is, and how I can come alongside with them in those positions and support them in their, vision. So it was a wonderful experiences.
Not unlike second graders, a lot of agents, let's be honest. So
daycare center is what I used to call it.
Love that. That is perfect. You stepped right into that role perfectly. And as you mentioned, also you had a John Maxwell certification as well. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So as I said, I got into that, as a means of just, coping with some, personal stuff that I was going through at the time. And I really went into it just to invest in myself and just to make myself better and to learn and grow. And really, I found the passion of just having this longing for continuous growth and continuous improvement. And in anything that I would do, I would find, okay, well, I did well here, but how can I get better? What is the lesson here? These things are happening, but what can I take from it? How can I learn? How can I, make myself better and the people around me better? At that time I was, heavily involved with, staff management and holding accountability groups in offices and, mindset and all that. And I saw how that, goes so hand in hand with, your personal development and your professional development. So it just became a passion that I will lifelong be a learner. I will constantly, go take, conferences and courses and just constantly develop myself, because if we're not growing, we're really just, what are we doing? So I never used it as a means to make money. It was never, I'm going to go and start my business in coaching or anything. Mm-hmm. But it's so infiltrated in everything that I do and everything that I see. And it's just, even now with my clients, I have, I'll always tell them, this business is, mindset. Mindset is everything. So if you are not developing your mindset, and if you're not growing and you're not keeping your, learning appetite open, then really this business, I'm entitled, it's sales, but in general, anything in real estate, you know that, Erin, it's 90% is attitude and 10% is what's happening to you. So you got to keep your mindset very strong.
You make such a great point, and appreciate you bringing it up. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, you're really hitting it as exactly it is. It's so interesting being in real estate, because you're often surrounded. You're in these offices. You're surrounded by other people, other agents, other lenders, other title officers, whoever it may be. I mean, we're all talking to each other. We're all supporting each other. But at the same time, you really, you're an island unto yourself, right? And you need that mindset. You have to find that motivation constantly, day in and day out, to get up and want to do this. I mean, even whether it's your passion or even if it's not. But to do this, you're bringing up something so real, so almost visceral. Like it's you have to have that mindset. I mean, you could see it in everybody's, little cubicle or their office. I mean, what little, not that there's like a cat hanging on a poster somewhere, hang in there, but people do have little sayings, little mantras, little vision boards, whatever it is. You see it in this business more than any other.
100%. I know one of the things that I learned, and this came from Maxwell, but I think it's so applicable, and it really just applies to any business and because we're in the relationship business, obviously. Mm-hmm. So I know that, he said, when people are looking to follow you in any capacity and you want to influence them, they ask you, 3 questions is, do you care for me? Can I trust you? And can you help me? So those 3 questions, I felt like, it applied in an organizational, leadership setting. It applied to sales. It applies to your family. It's just that learning really, tied into every area of my life. And that's why it's so important, I think, to have that in your, daily routine of some sort. Is how am I getting better? How am I, making a difference in my business and in the people's lives that I'm around? And how am I keeping my mindset strong when there's so much, negativity and fear and everything around here?
Those are powerful questions. May I ask a little bit slower and
Sure.
and to do them one more time, all 3?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's, do you care for me? And that question is a matter of compassion. Can I trust you? And that question is a matter of character. Mm-hmm. And can you help me? And that's a matter of competence. So I think in any setting, if you want to, pitch a sales listing appointment, or if you're trying to influence your children or whatever it is, those 3 questions are what people are asking to come to terms with. Will they say yes to you?
Yeah, great stuff. And thank you for sharing those. Let's segue now into how you got into what you're doing now. And become a sales account rep at Lawyers.
Yeah, so that's interesting. When I met, and I'll name him because he was like the reason I got into all this, was Bill Wigley, the team leader of Bakersfield. And he would tell me from the beginning, he said, Sarineh, why don't you look into title? And I would be like, no, I like the inside, stuff. I like the brokerage side. I like this, aspect of it. And I don't really think I want to get into that. But he would say that. And then periodically throughout, like, just my transition in, positions, people would say, you should get into title. And I just didn't understand what that meant. Like, why? And right. So there was a point where after I pretty much had done all the positions to a capacity, I had at least know exactly what each position entailed as far as, within the brokerage side. I said, well, what are my options? I did get my real estate license at the time. And I thought maybe, do I want to go independent and try, real estate sales on my own? And then title came up again, and I got pursued by, a few different companies, few different big teams. And it just happened to be at the time that I was looking. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to take a look at this. And I did, and I explored it. And I always, again, this is my leadership background, is I 100% believe everything rises and falls on leadership. So who I was in business with really mattered. And I chose lawyer's title because, I just couldn't think of better leadership to be under. At the time, Michelle Wow, she interviewed me, and she's still around, of course. And she was just, I just fell in love with who she was, what she stood for, and then what the company stood for. And I was all in with the idea of challenging myself to take a different role in the industry. I knew that I wanted to, get into sales, but I just didn't want to deal with the public. It seemed like, in the sense of going after and asking people to list homes in that capacity. And I felt like I really knew the realtor and the lender and the escrow and the mindset and what their needs were. And these were the people I had been serving for, 10 plus years, 13 plus years at the time, or however long. And I felt really comfortable, and I felt like I really could deliver on what their demands are and keep up with them, because this is just what I've been teaching the staff to do. This is what I've been doing, and I could best serve them. So I transitioned into title, and without mentorship, without, people that support you in the company, there's no way you can learn a new business and immediately get into it. But I was very, very fortunate that I had amazing relationships that immediately these agents trusted me, and they were like, you're in title. Okay, fine. We'll support you. And I got, immediate support that way, which I'm so blessed and grateful for. And the support of just an amazing company and management, which is unmatched in my opinion.
Oh, good. Sounds like you landed at the right place, and obviously you've been there for some time. But now let's talk a little bit about exactly what title is, because it's interesting. I think a lot of anyone who potentially is watching this, oftentimes are just standard homeowners, right? And they or listening to this, just regular buyers and sellers, and they get an idea or an inkling of what title is, or maybe they've been through it themselves, so they know what title is very specifically, or they kind of remember what it is. But I'm gonna start with duality here for a second. Escrow. I think everybody kind of wraps their head around escrow and knows what that is. Okay, this is a place I have to put my money, where when I'm buying a house, I have to put a deposit in there. It's held in escrow until we close on it. And then ultimately all the money is funded into escrow, right? Like I'm funding my portion of it. The seller's funding, whatever it may be, if they're selling a house, whatever, and how they get their proceeds, or vice versa for the buyer. And escrow that facilitates the sale. And it's a neutral third party that everybody gets to have a part of it. But, title may be a little bit more interesting, intriguing, dare I say confusing to people. Let's start with exactly what title is.
Yeah.
Let's start with that.
So it's an interesting question, because if you don't know what title insurance, that's a good thing, because you never had to deal with anything title related. That means, your
Right.
agent, your title rep, and you didn't have to get into any type of claims. So that's a wonderful thing.
Sure.
But essentially, what title insurance does really is it ensures that you're the rightful owner of the property. So obviously, from the inception of the property, there's been, multiple owners that may have been attached to that property. And with ownership, there may have been different liens that may have been attached to that property, whether it be child support, whether it be mechanics lien, whether it be any type of, judgments could have been attached to the property or to the name of the person owning the property. So essentially, what title does is it does an extensive research from all of the chain of title of everyone that was attached to that property, and pretty much goes through and says, okay, are we delivering free and clear title to this next homeowner, so that when we give them that grant deed, they are the rightful owner of that property, and that nobody else could come and claim their rights over that. And with title insurance, once that, you're insured and something happens thereafter, that's what you're protected from, in the sense that nobody else could come and say, hey, no, I'm the brother, I'm the sister, I'm this, because the title company would have done its due diligence in pretty much, doing all the research, doing all the surveys, doing everything that they needed to say, okay, we feel comfortable and we know that everything is paid off, the seller, everything is good, you're the rightful owner, here is your grant deed.
Right. And thank you very much for that. It's a perfect breakdown, essentially, of owner's title insurance, right? Like that is the idea. You're paying for a policy to be insured that if anything comes up after the fact, hey, that's why you paid for that policy. You are insured against it. Clearly, before everything closes, before the house closes and is transferred to you, the idea is to find all of those problems. And you brought up something that a lot of people might not know about themselves: the liens, the judgments, the extras against them personally, right? I mean, if somebody has that against them, it may run with their property. And a lot of owners don't otherwise know that and be like, uh-oh, that's actually a cloud on title, right? There's an encumbrance on title that might be affecting the sale of my property because I didn't pay taxes in such and such date 10 years ago. All of a sudden, this is attached. I didn't even know it, right? Or you mentioned a mechanics lien, which maybe you can tell a little bit about what that is exactly.
So basically, if you have some type of construction that's going on in your property, the title company will ask you to fill out an indemnity package, to fill out all this information that you have, work that's being done, who you owe money to, so that a contractor or somebody else can't come back and say, hey, I did work on your property, you sold it, you flipped it, but now, you ran and you got your property sold and you never paid me my money. So that those types of things are all disclosed so that a construction person or, someone working on your property can't come back and put a mechanics lien on your property saying, I didn't get paid for the work I did.
Right. And the other side of the owner's policy, and often, where someone like myself comes in and what I'm often concerned about is the lender's policy, which is very often paid for by a borrower. And let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about the distinction between an owner's policy and a lender's policy, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So in any given transaction, you are definitely going to have an owner's policy, which is the new homeowner is going to, get clean title. And typically everything is negotiable in real estate, as we know, but typically the seller will pay for the owner's policy, the new homeowner's policy. And that price is based off of the sales price. And it's a one-time premium. So just if you're, like a car insurance, if you're paying for that, you pay for something that may happen, in the future. Title insurance is a one-time premium, and that basically clears from anything that could have happened in the past. Yep. So that's, your homeowner's policy. And typically there are two policies, which nowadays when they say extended Alta, it's all the same, that you get that Alta policy, which is the extended homeowner's policy. Mm-hmm. And that is for, typically for, 1 to 4 units, single family to 4 units. And then if you're doing land or commercial, that would be your CLTA policy. Okay. And there's a difference, and I'll refer you guys if anybody wants to get more details on what those comparisons are, and a bunch of other resources, on our website, LA lawyers title LALTIC.com. You'll have all those resources there. Right. But the difference between that and a lender's policy is the lender's policy protects the lender. So typically the borrower, if they are taking a loan, they will get a lender's policy that the lender will require, and they are paying for that. And that's going to be based off of the loan price. Right. If you don't have a loan on that property and you're all cash, then that transaction will constitute one title policy, which would be the homeowner's policy, right. If not two policies.
So the homeowner's policy is paid for most of the time by the seller. That's what's negotiated. Pretty clear about that. And you as the new homeowner get protected. But you as the new homeowner more than likely need to, especially if you're getting a loan on the property, need to then get a lender's policy. Now, you, the homeowner, are paying for that. The seller pays for your owner policy, but you, the borrower, you, the new homeowner, are paying for the lender's policy.
Absolutely.
And the same kind of thing applies here. The lender wants to know the same thing. Are there any liens? Are there anything? Because why would they otherwise want to know that? Why would...
Yeah. So besides the fact that, they want to protect their position in, if they come to sell the property, are they going to be the first or the second position to get paid out of that transaction? Yeah. So they're ensuring their position with that. So whether you do a new purchase of a home and you take a loan, or whether you do a refinance, the lender will always require a lender's policy, and it's for their protection. Now, not to get into details of what it is and, how it works, but the lenders will typically, require certain, based on the loan type and based on, the history of who the person is and the details of that transaction, they may ask for endorsements. And those are just additional coverages that, the lender feels more comfortable to take on that loan and ensure their position by saying, okay, we want these additional items to be covered as well. And then they would just pay extra for those endorsements.
Right. Yeah. Love it. And I appreciate you bringing those up, certainly. And, kind of going back a little bit about what you said. So again, a lender wants to protect their position, right? They don't want anything to jump in front of it. You mentioned mechanics liens, mentioned taxes, mentioned judgments, whatever it is. I mean, they expect that that when title's being delivered, it's clear as well. And there are other things that could pop up on something. For instance, a property itself might have a substandard on it, right? Just not to get too into the weeds in there, pun intended, because an example of a substandard, right, might just be weeds, might just be like, hey, this property that's being purchased, because a lot of times, and I work with investors, somebody's buying a property that's not in the best condition, but there happens to be this small substandard on there where the city said, yo, you let the weeds grow a little too high on there. There's this small substandard. Now the lender has a decision to make whether they want to say, I'm going to allow that, assuming that the new homeowner is going to buy this and kind of clean that up, or do I want it cleared up before it closes because I don't want anything to, have an effect on my lien, whatever it may be. But certainly taxes, certainly mechanics liens, certainly, a judgment that's on there, or anything else that can be something that jumps in front, or another lien, or somebody else's mortgage, right? And somebody didn't realize it's like, by the way, this mortgage is still on here and it's not paid off, or it's not going to get paid off, whatever it may be. Right. A new lender is certainly going to want to know about that. And it's for the protection of a lender, and I think about that all the time, because a lot of my borrowers are always like, wait, why am I paying for the lender to also have a policy? But that lender wants not only protection, but they want a sizable amount of their loan amount, to be protected as well. And then ultimately let's talk about kind of the end of the transaction. So really, let's go back to the first part of the transaction, preliminary title report. That is what's ordered, and everybody gets a chance to take a look at that. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what prelim is, quote unquote prelim.
Preliminary title report is really our intent to ensure. So we're really bringing in an extensive search to see, again, what has been hitting the property from the inception of it, from this owner, what's going on, what's attaching to the preliminary title report. So what I love about our prelim report is it has a section called Live Look. And what it does, because in the past, people would look at, the prelims and go, this is confusing. Like, it looks like legal language and we don't know how to read this. This Live Look that Lawyer's Title has, it really just breaks down and itemizes, it itemizes vesting. So how your property's held. It itemizes taxes. It itemizes any loans that you may have, on the prelim. Of course, it's going to be referred to as deed of trust, and it'll tell you who is the beneficiary of it. And it just basically breaks down any taxes, property taxes, any unsecured liens, any easements that may be on the property, any CC&Rs. So it itemizes it, so you're able to just click on it and expand it, and it shows you all that information. And then of course there's the exceptions to the policy, if there's any. It'll lay it out on Schedule B, and then the requirements page, which will say make sure that you submit your statement of information, which I do want to touch upon, because a lot of times delays and cancellations of escrows could be avoided if people turned in their statement of information early on in the transaction. And a lot of times people will wait until the last minute and submit that to escrow. And I just had a deal, and something at the 11th hour popped up, which was a judgment, which was not something that could just be, looked away. And so with title issues, it's like, it's usually not a problem until it's a problem, then it's a real problem. And your deal could, end up.
It's not a problem until it's a problem, and then it's a real problem. So, love the way you put that.
So statements of information are super important. And what that does is it puts down the borrowers and the owner, sellers, and all their information as far as their social security. And then that's how it gets ran as to, is there anything else that's attaching to their name that would be attached to the property? So did I answer your question, or did I miss?
You answered it and then some. And now let's jump sort of, right to the end of a transaction. So right at the end, essentially, title takes this deed, whatever it may be, oftentimes a grant deed or a quitclaim deed or whatever it may be, and brings it to the county, right, for recordation.
Yeah. So, with COVID, and even prior to that, we were doing electronic recording, but now that's just standard customary practice, is that we do recording. So the lender will fund if there's a loan, and then the next day is typical that the property will be recorded with the county, and we'll get confirmation and congratulate all the parties involved that their transaction has recorded.
And now it's recorded, and the county knows about you, and they get to reassess their taxes, and that's important for them.
and to touch up on that too is something that I think it's important for consumers or anybody that's watching or considering anything title related or transferring title. One of the things that is not talked about is when you're doing an uninsured deed. So, for example, if you wanted to just transfer title because you needed to, add somebody on or take somebody off, and you're going through this process of doing a quit claim after a transaction is closed, it's really important that you check with the title rep or a title company and just verify what does that mean for their title coverage, because that could mean that they may forfeit their title coverage if they're just bringing in, taking on, and who those parties are with uninsured deeds. And that's what quit claims are. When you record it, anybody could go record anything to the county. And so once these things are attached to your chain of title, when you come to sell, they're going to show up on your prelim, and then it's going to be a red flag that says the effect of a deed, and then they're going to have to do their due diligence in verifying did you actually mean to transfer over, and they're going to ask for affidavits. So just because somebody writes it and says that it's transferred doesn't mean that when you come to transfer it, they're not going to ask that person to sign off that this was a legitimate transfer. So that's important to keep in mind. And then just to double check if you are forfeiting title coverage by doing the way that you're doing with those title transfers.
Very informative, very appreciative. Sarineh, our 30 minutes are up. It goes quick. But yeah, can't thank you enough. This has been awesome, educational, and every other possible adjective you could think of for having you on. So thank you very much, Sarineh Yedgarian, Lawyer's Title. You have taught us a great deal today, and appreciate sharing your story as well. We'll have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you.